Think about it. Every hiring decision is a choice that can make or break a team, a culture, and even an entire company. So how do we make the right choice? Hi, I'm Dr. Mickey, and welcome to Inside the Mind of Hiring. Here we'll uncover the psychology and strategy behind effective hiring, because the right fit isn't just about skill or experience. It's about understanding people, their motivations, their strengths, and the shadows of their shortcomings. Together, we'll tackle the tough questions. How do we look beyond bias? How do we find the qualities that make people not just qualified hires, but the right hires? This is about identifying leaders who drive success, lift morale, and actualize a company's vision. Inside the Mind of Hiring starts now. Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Mickey Fineberg, and this is Inside the Mind of Hiring. Today's episode is succession. And I want Dr. Pat to keep me on track here.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you had me at the word succession. Okay.
I did already.
Because everybody, I mean, like if you're watching anything like streaming, what do you know? What do you know about live?
Right. So every time I love the episode, I love the series Succession. I really loved it. And every time I would see an episode, it reminded me of this Italian-owned supermarket chain that I worked with for some 20 years.
Wow.
And it was one of the most exciting and interesting and enriching parts of my career. You know, it's almost like I had other clients when I was working with them, but boy, I focused a lot of time and energy on them because I just really loved it. It was really fun. It was definitely intellectually challenging and stimulating as well. So this chain was started by Generation One in the 1920s. And there was a husband and wife that started a produce business. And basically it was just a street vendor cart in Norristown, which is about 20 miles west of Philadelphia, center city, Philadelphia. And so they sold produce out of this cart, but they also delivered. They had a delivery business, and they delivered produce to the Norristown folks. And his wife couldn't have stayed in the business much longer than she did, but he was definitely the patriarch because they ended up having 5 sons, and I think they had a bunch of daughters too. And the 5 sons, I think it was they were in the business when they were in high school, and they got involved in the business, and as adults around the 50s, they started. They had 5 stores in the chain by then.
Yeah.
Actually, a superette, which was a small store, but then they had 5 stores when the brothers took over as G2 owners, and they each had a store.
Yeah.
And as the business grew, and one of the reasons, there was 2 reasons why the business grew like it did. Strong service. When you ask somebody about a product in a store, they wouldn't tell you what aisle it's in. They would escort you to not just the aisle, but to the product.
I know. I grew up in a family that owned, what do we call them? Stores like this. So when we're talking about stores, can you put it in context for everybody? You know, when we start to mention stores like this, they think of like these super grocery stores, like where you all are out at ShopRite, right? Out here at Safeway. But there's something about these family businesses that when they start from the ground up, like my uncles did, they do deliver. You know what I'm saying? I remember my cousin had to deliver an apple to one of the neighbors in the Bronx. But this story you're telling is about this beautiful web of connections and people and dedication. Isn't that what we're talking about here?
No question. So these guys were first rate in terms of service. and they were pretty first rate in terms of merchandising practices. They really they knew where they were operating in. They knew the neighborhoods and the communities they operated in, and they served up merchandising and products that were aligned with the ethnic variations in the communities that they served. And believe me, it was very much appreciated by the
Yeah.
customers. And that was something that certainly accelerated their growth. And so the five brothers, God bless them, they had 10 sons, two each. They also had daughters,
Wow.
but the nine of the sons, cousins, became generation three. And the oldest one became the CEO like his father was in generation two. And they just kept going. And the adults, they were all adults. I'm trying to get them at the right time. The five brothers, after so much time, they got out of the stores and they hired people to run the stores. And they became mainly responsible for merchandising the stores. The product connections and the product choices and mixes and the pricing and all that.
Yeah. And that's a very big deal. Let's just comment on this for a minute.
No question.
Because this is keeping the culture and the product intact with its origin. So when we talk about something like this, we're not talking about these major chains of stores that have this machine that will take anything in at the lowest price. That's not what we're talking about here.
Right. No, they're merchandising and retailing is an extremely important aspect of the business, as is store operations. What I learned is store operations is responsible for volume, sales volume, and merchants are responsible for gross profit. And margins are very narrow in supermarket chains. If they're about 2%, believe it or not. So, but anyway, the five brothers became merchants, and then their sons, the nine cousins, one of them, I don't know if I said it, became a priest. So he wasn't involved in the business, but the nine cousins very much were. And they started, running they were trained and groomed to run the merchandising side of the business. So each one of them had a niche. It could be frozen foods, it could be meat, it could be deli, chicken, fish, grocery, non-foods, all that stuff. They were all responsible for that, and even real estate, because they were a growing company and they had to manage their real estate relationships in existing stores, and also find new sites and develop new sites for new stores.
So they were responsible not just for the day-to-day, but they were responsible for the growth and the expansion. Right? Because we're not just talking about a store that originated based on culture or, location. We're talking about an entrepreneurial team.
Right, exactly. And the questions that emerge are, when the heck did I get involved at them? What phase of the business did I get involved with that wonderful family? And what did I do in my own humble small way to help them grow? And what happened to G3, and what actually happened with G4? A lot of companies don't get, family businesses don't get beyond G2 actually. So this business was totally ensconced in G3 and probably really licking their chops around what G4 could have. So they weren't shy about having kids either, the nine cousins. So what happened was they were a 14-store business by the time that Dr. Mickey got involved. And they had a director of operations running all 14 stores. But they had like a district manager running 7 of the stores. But the operation was getting too big. So they needed a district manager for the other 7 stores. So they went to their own ranks of store managers, and they picked 4 to compete as candidates for becoming a district manager of these 7 stores. And Dr. Pat, they really wore me out. they were extremely competitive candidates. And they were really selling themselves, and they were very credible, all of them. As it turned out, I felt that two really had what it took, from a professional opinion to run the 7 stores. Um, but one of the two I thought was a little better organized than the other. Um, the one that I thought was probably the top candidate just had a better sense of the big picture. And when you're going from 4 walls to 28 walls, you got to be pretty well organized. The other guy, I really was really impressed by his passion and his intellect and everything, but a little bit too immersed in details at that time. So I recommended the candidate that I thought was better organized, basically, because they both had pretty good people skills. And so they did pick the candidate I recommended to become the district manager managing the 7 stores. They all came in for feedbacks. They all came in for debriefs on the data. And the guy that, was qualified, I thought, but didn't quite make it, he was loaded for bear. And I said to myself, Mickey, and I was a relatively young business psychologist at the time. And I needed I always need more experience, definitely. But what I told myself is, Mickey, you got to be straight with this guy, or he's not going to respect you. So I gave it to him straight. And wow, I was really taken by how well he took it. And he said, Mickey, I'm really motivated to do something about myself and to develop where you feel like to leverage my strengths, but also develop in this area so I can be qualified for the next opportunity.
Wow.
Right. And the guy I actually recommended and was selected did pretty well. He did pretty well. But this guy, when they maybe had around 20, 25 stores, and the original vice president director of stores retired, guess who became the vice president director of stores?
I think I already know the answer, right?
Yeah, the guy that didn't make it. He jumped over the guy that I recommended, was doing okay as a district manager, but he jumped over him and became the vice president director of stores. And I had a great time working with this guy. Believe me, we used to do, my associate and he used to do these store development programs for store managers, and it was a lot of fun. And what I did after that experience was I also tested store department managers for their potential to become store managers. And they were growing, and they needed store managers to fill those positions. And so what I did was I tested them, the ones that they selected and they thought had potential, they sent them to me. And, I said, this is what it would take for this person to be ready for this job, for this store manager job. But I also tested them to see if there was any potential regarding a merchandising or buying career path as well. So, which was very important to them. And just as we discussed how important that role is for a company of that nature, or any retail company, but particularly a supermarket.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you a question before you go. Continue, because
not going anywhere.
Well, here's the question I have. What do you think? I want to talk about the person that you talked to and said, okay, you did not get the job, and he said to you he wanted feedback, who ultimately got the other job.
Right.
I want to talk about the difference between the two people in a different way, because, look, I've talked to you, and we'll do a show about this, I'm shocked at the number of women leaving the workforce. And I've been trying to find out, I'm going to probably do a poll on motivation. Right. So I want to talk about motivation for a minute, because I've been looking at this for myself. And I wonder if in your experience, and certainly my corporate operations, somebody that asks for feedback, somebody that's willing to learn and grow, I can't tell you the value of that to me. And I almost long to be back I'm going to take this back. I don't really long to be back in a corporate environment. What I loved about the corporate environment is how much funding they had to get feedback. But I want to ask you, that guy, I want to know in the meantime, while he wasn't doing the job, he must have been a good team player. And then here he comes back to you and he gets the other job. Can you explain from a psychology perspective, what do you make of that?
Well, what I make of it is they all had to come back in their white shirts. They all had, and I want to emphasize, it's a very strict dress code at this company.
Oh,
They
you
all,
didn't say that.
they
Oh,
all, all the department managers, store managers, managers everywhere in the company, they all wore white shirts, crisp white shirts, and different colored ties, but white shirts.
well,
So
yeah.
they all had to come back, Dr. Pat, for a feedback after that, after the
Yeah.
assessment process. This guy came back like he was prepared. He was taking notes. He was asking questions. He needed to clarify things. He really, they all wore me out in the assessment. This guy wore me out in the feedback. Okay.
That
And
was my point. I wanted to get some depth because if you look, I would love for people to say to me, I really want to get better at my job. Can you get me some feedback? I really want to
right,
do more of this. But at the same time, the reality of the world we live in high tech, and certainly for us, the changes we're going through. But
right,
as I look for a new producer, I'm looking for that. So tell
right.
me a bit about that when you say he bombarded you or overwhelmed you with the feedback. And what did you do with that, Dr. Mickey?
Well, I was taken back because he was really engaged in the process. And I could just really tell, even more than the other guys, he really was really taking it seriously. He was just taking it seriously. And then, I worked with him after that, and I could see that he was taking steps. He was always viewed by the CEO of G3 as being one of the most passionate guys that that worked for him. And the CEO of G3, he was passionate. I just love, I became, when they took over ownership of the company, G3, um, uh, one of the things that I did was the CEO became kind of like, I became his confidant. And we would come to my office once a month to talk about things that gave him joy and the things that frustrated him. One of the things that gave him joy was this guy. He just really, he said, he's a hard horse to tame. But you
Yeah,
don't want to tame him because he just keeps dragging. He keeps dragging me and everybody else in the right direction. He's
yeah.
really got it. And he was a pretty special guy, this guy
Hmm.
that rose above the guy that I recommended. He was
Yeah,
really a special guy.
yeah,
And the store, I'm sorry, the CEO, um, he never sat down in my office. He paced around like a caged tiger, talking about what was going on in the business. I just didn't have to tell him much. He would talk to me, and things would get clear, and then he would decide what he wanted to do. I gave him very little advice other than that he had to get out to the stores, engage the people more, and
yeah,
be more of an ambassador.
yeah,
That was the only thing that I think I shared with him that he took on and internalized that and really acted and really did that. But you were asking me about this fellow that basically rose to the top role and what you could rise to in a family business.
yeah,
And I really admired the guy for taking the feedback and doing something with it and becoming what he became. Um, but there was a point where this CEO said to me, he said, one at what session we were having, he said, Mick, I really like, I really like and respect my cousins. They really are dedicated to the business. They really try, and I really respect and I have a lot of gratitude in terms of what they give. But he said, G4 isn't going anywhere. There's nobody really interested or talented enough in G4. And I'm not sure that I don't really think my cousins, God love them, they don't have the sophistication to take this business where I think it can really go in the next 5 years so that we can really, I think I really want to do a gangbuster sale with this business, but this business has to be valued to a significantly greater level. And so what I need to do is I need to help my cousins separate ownership from leadership, get out of their jobs, become owners, and play that role to the hilt, contribute to the business's strategic direction, but work on the business with me, not in it. And and I think there's a lot of things they can do that will enrich them sufficiently so they feel good. Now, these cousins, he's taking a risk because they could have bought him out. They could have fired him as CEO because they were all equal shareholders.
Oh, I know.
And but we went through a process of individual meetings with them, group meetings, where they really were able to consolidate their roles in ways that they were comfortable and they felt good about in terms of what they could be to the employees, what they could be to their customers, what they could be to the trade, and what they could be to the community at large. And they really played that to the hilt. In the meantime, I helped them select new executives to take their place. And we had some missteps there. But by and large, I think they had to fire the human resources VP and bring in somebody new. Actually, it was one of the few women in executive roles in that company, and she became the vice president of human resources, and she was very successful. And she took it up to where, to the point of the sale.
Mm-hmm.
And the other executives, they hired an overall merchandising VP who handled all of the departments and everything,
Mm-hmm.
individual leaders in those departments.
Mm-hmm.
And the sale was gangbusters. The sale was gangbusters.
Mm-hmm.
It was, as a matter of fact, it was Safeway, a California
Well, we got the
conglomerate.
Safeway here. Yeah.
Yeah, a California conglomerate.
Mm-hmm.
It took over the company. The family just, talk about a liquidity event. They made out like gangbusters. And not just the shareholders, the cousins, but all their families did
Mm-hmm.
very well. And they took good care of the daughters, believe me. The only thing I regretted about that business was there wasn't enough women in key roles that I could work with and enjoy. But at that time, Italian companies or family companies were pretty,
yeah, there's no question about
patriarchal, paternal.
There's no question about items like that. There are, I mean, I come from that family. We own chains of restaurants,
Right.
of course. But in the end, what a great success story.
What happened was Safeway it turned out, at least in terms of the way that chain was, they were called Gennardi's. I shouldn't mention, but they're out of business long enough where I can mention their name. I feel comfortable. It was called Gennardi's Family Markets. They kept the Gennardi's name. Where they screwed up is they're very autocratic, and they were from California. So it was very centralized leadership in California. They didn't care much about the local markets, and all they wanted, the CFO is one of the few candidates that I tested from the outside became the president after the sale. And he was totally controlled by them. And he didn't like it. And he was not of that kind of personality. He wanted to run his own business, and they wouldn't let him. And not only that, their merchandising practices were totally boring and inflexible. So what happened was the business went down. It wasn't the same old Gennardi's by any stretch of the imagination. The business went down, and the stores were acquired by three prominent regional chains in this area. But they got the merchandising act together, for sure. And it's not called Gennardi's anymore. It's actually called Giant.
Exactly.
Yeah. And now I enjoy going to the market, my local market again.
Yeah.
The service level, I will say, is not the same, but the merchandising practices are.
Of course it's not, though. Of course
No,
it's not. Well, look, bringing this full circle, thank you for a beautiful story, but also thank you for reminding us that some of those old culture customer service approaches can work. They can work.
Oh, really?
But we're not grooming anyone to understand that. At least, you have some people that are like, but in general,
Well, they had one of the things I didn't mention is they had a very strict promote from within policy until the very
Of
end.
course they did.
And their employees were really loyal because of that. They were really loyal because of that. They felt like they had a stake in that company, and everybody was eligible to go somewhere in that company. And they didn't bring outsiders in until they really felt that they had to in order to build the value or accelerate the value at the very end. So it was a very employee-friendly type of organization, and they all felt like they were part of the Gennardi family.
What a great story. I mean, but this is your life experience, Dr. Mickey. Let's take a minute and just thank you for that, because you have all these experiences in what you do, and we're going to have many more to talk about. But how do people find out about you?
Oh, me. Okay. Well, they can look me up on look up our website, www.deltaconsultants.com. They can look me up, Dr. Mickey Fineberg, on LinkedIn, and check out my profile.
Yep.
Your listeners can email me at Mickey, M-I-C-K-E-Y, at deltaconsultants.com. And they can call me, but I'm not going to give them.
Well, I mean, the point is this.
Look me up on LinkedIn, you can find
me. You can find. But here's the point to all of you out there. You may not be the owner of your company, but now you have a contact. And what I mean by that is, if you're sitting in the space that so many people are sitting in, you're scratching your head asking, how are these hiring decisions made? Well, if you want them made in a very organized, very objective way, that's what Dr. Mickey does. And pass it on. If you're not the decision maker, but you're looking around you and saying, how in the world did that executive get there? Okay, time to call Dr. Mickey. Dr. Mickey, thank you so much for today.
Coaching never hurt anybody.
Look, we're not making great decisions hiring at these levels. We're just not.
Right.
But you don't find that out until it's too late. And we really don't have time anymore to be late, especially with the advancements and acceleration of technology. Right. Thank you, Dr. Mickey. Thank you so much for today. You bet. And for those of you out there, maybe we'll do a show on what it's like to be the niece in an Italian restaurant, nightclub, arena. We'll see you next time.
You have been listening to Inside the Mind of Hiring with me, Dr. Mickey Fineberg. Tune in the first and third Tuesday at 11 on Transformation Talk Radio to discover the psychology of making successful hiring decisions. In each episode, hiring managers and HR pros will learn how to leverage assessments and other key screening sources and avoid common pitfalls. Job seekers will gain insight into successfully presenting themselves. For more information on assessing people for mission-critical jobs and on career assessment and coaching, visit deltaconsultants.com and my LinkedIn profile. If you'd like to write me personally, it's Mickey, M-I-C-K-E-Y, at deltaconsultants.com.